11 minutes past 7. You're watching BBC Breakfast. Let's take you back to one of our main stories. And President Trump has criticised the judge who overturned his immigration ban, saying people should blame him for putting the security of the United States at risk. Travellers from 7 mainly Muslim countries can enter the US for the moment. So let's remind ourselves where we are after days of legal wrangling. So it's over a week since Donald Trump signed his executive order banning certain nationalities from entering the United States in the name of what he called national security. But following nationwide protests, a federal court overturned the ban, with the judge saying it was unconstitutional. Well, on Saturday came the first attempt for the president to get the ban restored. He argued his presidential authority was being undermined, but that appeal was rejected yesterday, and the Justice Department has until this afternoon to file a response. President Trump is due to resubmit his order later on this week. Well, joining us now from Pennsylvania is political scientist Dr. Kopko. Morning to you. Thanks very much. Well, officially, the president has to wait, as it were, but he hasn't stopped tweeting about it and being very critical of the judge, hasn't he?
That's correct. And honestly, this is something that is pretty new to presidential scholars. We haven't seen this type of attacks on a federal judge in quite some time, particularly in real time on Twitter, no less.
OK, so what happens now, do you think? I mean, it is an executive order, isn't it? So what is the normal process for this kind of order?
Well, now that it's been signed and it's been challenged in federal court, it's a matter of trying to determine, one, will there be an end to the executive order, at least on a temporary basis? That's pending before the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in San Francisco right now, and we could have a decision on that within the next day or two. And then beyond that, we need to also consider the merits of the legal challenge as to whether or not the executive order itself is unconstitutional or if it violates other aspects of federal law and should be permanently restricted.
OK, so this really puts the president and parts of the judicial system at odds, doesn't it? I mean, in the proper, very disruptive. What do you think the sort of implications are?
Well, let's start here. It's important to keep in mind there are at least 19 federal court cases throughout the United States pending on this executive order. The case that was decided on Friday out of Seattle, Washington, was the first case to have a blanket nationwide restriction on this executive order. There was also a case out of Boston, Massachusetts, which largely upheld President Trump's executive order. And so now we're kind of in this period of judicial chaos, so to speak, where we're trying to get federal courts of appeals and perhaps the United States Supreme Court in the coming weeks to weigh in on this situation so there can be uniformity throughout the legal jurisdictions of the United States.
It seems such an extraordinary situation that has happened. So at the moment, people can travel. The executive order is not in place. They're all okay to travel.
That's correct, at least for the time being. But again, this could be reversed within the next day or two by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals or another court of appeals somewhere in the United States, depending on how some of these other trial court decisions occur in the next few days. Okay,
so you're a political scientist. You say you've never really seen anything like this before. I suppose it's difficult then to answer. Where do we go from here?
I think right now what we'll see is a decision by the Ninth Circuit, probably by Monday or Tuesday afternoon, if I had to guess. And from there, we'll have to see, first of all, do they uphold Judge James Robart's initial decision to stay the executive order. And then from there, the Trump administration could bring this case to the United States Supreme Court, at least in the interim, before they have the chance to fully brief the matter. No matter what, I could see the Justice Department taking the time to fully brief this matter in the courts, and eventually, over time, this could end up before the United States Supreme Court for a full oral argument addressing the constitutionality of the executive order itself.
Thank you very much. In the meantime, people can travel. Dr. Kopko, thank you very much for your time this morning.